All right, ladies and gentlemen, hello and welcome back once again to the longest running show in the world about data. It's called DM Radio, and we got a virtual summit here today. I got three of my besties on the line, so we're going to do a presentation and then we'll do our radio show. Well, we've got Sarang Bapat, one of the nicest and smartest guys I've met in this field. He really knows his stuff, Senior VP of Analytics and Data and things of that nature over at Mitsubishi Electric. And Lou Simon dialing in from Optima here in Pittsburgh, Yinzer Nation. And my buddy Sammy Akbay is so committed to the cause here. He's sitting in his car halfway between New York and New Jersey. And we're going to have a lot of fun today. The AI trifecta, solving organizational friction with head, hands, and heart. We're going to talk about how you get things done. And as we said in the promo, a lot of times it's not the model. Sometimes it's the data. Sometimes it's not the data. It's the organizational friction. Sometimes you refer to that as the will of the enterprise to get things done. But I love this concept, and I think that Sarang is really onto something here. You need to find ways to dissolve the friction. You need lubricant of some kind, basically. I remember one of my favorite philosophers, Wittgenstein, once said, "The answer lies in the dissolution of the question." I was like, bro, that's pretty deep, man. Those Germans, they're real thinkers. But with that, Sarang Bapat, I'll throw it over to you. Walk us through your presentation and what you've learned about succeeding, getting projects to launch and get into production.
Yeah. So thank you, Eric, for the warm introduction. So today I'm kind of going to talk about, why we see a lot of the AI projects fail, and kind of it's difficult to get from your AI experiments to actually make it an enterprise AI capability. And most of the time, I mean, it's not necessarily just the technology stuff. As a result of that, these things are not working or not succeeding. It's more to do with the organizational friction that we have been talking about. So I think the approach that I'm going to propose, before I jump into that, I kind of wanted to show a little bit of how the landscape looks like. And in 2025, normally what we see is there has been a lot of hype around the AI and what value it is going to bring and all that. But in reality, in last year, in 25, 26, there is a stark contrast on what we are seeing. So as far as the investment hype goes, little over $500 billion are spent in the US in the AI in 2025. If you think about what failure rates people are kind of showing in different research reports and others is to the tune of 70 to 75% from P&L perspective. So over $400 billion in sunk capital for P&L impact. That kind of loses the fact that there is an opportunity cost for that sunk cost, and we couldn't spend that for our core R&D spending, for example. So these are large numbers. But if you talk about the AI readiness and things like that, actually the technology piece has matured a lot, believe it or not, right? So we hear a lot about how the GPTs are improving. You're seeing all the time next versions, like, do you want to use the deep learning, quick questions? I mean, it's improving a lot over time. LLM models are improving. Your RAG methodologies are growing, speed wise, as far as, as well as the compute, and how do we figure that out? Everybody's trying to solve for hallucination problem. So lot going on in the technology space. So technology definitely has matured on these things, but the organizational readiness is not. So as far as the AI readiness, it's not just the technology, it's the whole organizational structure, and that's the friction that we are going to talk about more. And so the success is no longer just a technical problem or the technical challenge, it's more of a structural one. So I kind of wanted to set the stage with that and then give a little bit of the what some of the reports that you notice, and I have pointed out few here, but MIT had one in 2025 that kind of talks about 5% of the Gen AI pilots actually reached to a measurable P&L impact. Uh, that's kind of a huge number of failure rate there. Gartner in 25, 26 even predicting 40% of your agentic AI projects will be canceled by 2027. And a lot of that they're kind of citing that because of poor data readiness. Rand Corporation has this thing where the AI projects are failing twice at the rate of the IT projects. Uh, and then S&P, intelligence, that's kind of talking about how the business is scrapping a lot of these initiatives and percentages are going up from 20% in 24 to 40 plus percent in 25. Uh, Again, few more examples kind of showing across the different industries or even the geographic locations. US has like 75% of the failure rates, rest of the world has 68. This is one of the IBM reports talking about the global failures. Also, the top reasons like why some of these things are happening is poor data quality. We have lack of clear strategy, talent gaps. I'm going to touch on that more in my presentation. But wanted to have that as a backdrop, kind of to show the current state. And I feel like a lot of these things have to do with the organizational friction. Then how do we go about solving for that? And if you ask around, I mean, Sammy, you are talking to people who are talking. You're talking to a lot of customers. Eric, you have a lot of experience in, talking to organizations. What we hear for why some of these projects are not as production ready or as succeeded from P&L impact perspective, here's the kind of thing you will see. It's the poor data quality, or we didn't have the clear business problem defined. There was no ROI target. Sometimes people say, we kind of experiment kind of worked, but there was no path to deployment or operationalization. At times we hear there is lack of cross-functional alignment. Or in some instances, it's plain like we didn't end up adopting that as much as we thought it would. So a lot of these things that you're seeing, not all technical. I mean, there is a lot to it beyond the technology component of this to make it a successful affair. So what I'm proposing here is a simpler thought process where if we say we have to put together our hands, head, and heart to kind of come together as an organization. So think of it as head part is thinking with your head to come up with the right use case. With the real strong domain expertise and SMEs insight, and they are included in that process to come up with the right case. I remember a while back, like 2010, around that time when the big data was hot, and I was on a committee kind of to vet are these real big data use cases or not. And a lot of times people would come back with a use case and say, this is a big data use case because I have like 1 billion rows. And we're like, that's just the volume aspect of the data. We can solve that problem with something else. That doesn't necessarily make it a big data use case. Is it a different variety? It's a different velocity. There are other aspects needed to be considered. Same thing here. I mean, are all problems AI use case? Probably not. I mean, sometimes people are looking for just a basic automation workflow. Sometimes it is more like a robotics process automation. So some people are kind of putting these use cases as AI, but they're not the exact AI use cases. Then beyond that, building the solutions with the hands, kind of moving into idea that if that it is really an AI solution, then it has to be technically sound, scalable, privacy first, able to deploy things effectively, and so on and so forth. And then last piece is championing that with the heart, meaning has this been advertised well across the organization? Like, why are we doing it? How is it beneficial? All of that. Because each one of these pieces actually is combined together going to make it a success. They're individually great, but we need all of them to run in tandem for us to succeed as an AI initiative. So the same picture as the one I showed before, lot of these examples or reasons why we were showing things are failing are falling under this head, heart, and hand category. So, for example, node paths to deployment or operationalization is kind of a hand problem. Human adoption failing is a heart problem. Poor alignment or no clear problem definition or ROI target, that's a head problem. So it does fall into either of those buckets if we have that structure clearly defined.
Hmm.
So little bit of thing around, when we learn necessary sufficient condition in math in, like, high school, there was like, if isosceles triangle is when two of these uh, sides have the same length, or if it is an the basic, like, right angle triangle, it got to be these types of diff conditions. So this is exactly that. We are talking about thinking with the head, building with the hands, and championing with the heart as individual necessary conditions. But not they are not by themselves enough to make it sufficient unless we do all three of them well. Um, so here's a little bit of set of examples, if you will, on if you do one or the other and what has happened in the past. Probably you guys have heard about the Stargate concept, where OpenAI and Oracle kind of came up with this idea of we needing to build a lot of these data centers and all of that, and there is a big investment behind it and all that. I think it's not well talked through. I don't know whether hard part is there. People are kind of understanding why we need it, how we need to go ahead and do that, or is it more like a technology play? So it is more of a head only kind of a play there. If you talk about the metaverse and NFTs, a couple of years back, there was a lot of hype that even the consumers were excited about, and it was more of a they bought into it, but it was more blind hype with the heart only component.
Hmm.
Then, if you think about the hands and heart together but no head, that's kind of your chat GPT running wild in the enterprise. People love the heart. I mean, they understand that it's required and this is great tool for me. Some people are even writing some sort of agents here and there and to come up with the answer. But with no head and no governance, I think they are creating things and pulling information like PII and other things that they shouldn't be pulling in, and it's kind of not working because the head piece is missing there. So I'm trying to show some of these examples to say this is not just a one thing. It's all of these things need to come together for our AI implementations to work.
Yeah, I love this. And real quick, I can't help myself but to chime in, Sarang. And I love the head only equals vaporware. That's hilarious. Heart only is blind hype. And what I thought was, look, ma, no hands. Look, ma, no feet. Look, ma, no teeth. Right? That's not using your head, bro. Hello. Anyway, go ahead.
So yeah, and other thing is all of these pieces that I'm talking about has very heavy human involvement. So technology is one part, but people figuring out the right use case with the head, people who are going to use it for the right reason, advertise it well, all of that. All of these pieces are actually people doing that work. So human in the loop is critical. Probably human in the loop concept people have heard. Why I'm calling it a plus, you will know in a minute. But uh, if I kind of for a minute talk about the part that some people might already know, and that's this we keep talking about the human and the AI oversight models. And obviously, first of it is more human in the loop. So AI product kind of analyzes the data, comes suggests the actions, but the actual decision making is at the hand of the human. So loan approval process is a good example. A lot of people have used that in the banks and other places where a lot of these things are done with the AI, but the last mile of actual approval is in the hands of the human. So that's your human in the loop component. If you think about the human on the loop, that's where you're talking about your autonomous vehicles, like AI is driving the car and then human is monitoring what's going on, but if required it can intervene. And funny enough, I mean, I literally in Christmas, Tesla kind of opens up their free trial for a couple of weeks for your full self-driving capability. So my son was very excited. I was quite nervous, but because of him, we kind of tried that, and it runs fabulously. I mean, the car drives well without you intervening. Now, when it went to like 4-lane highways and starting to change the lanes, I got scared. I put the wheel on. I'm like, I'm taking the control back. And that's when I intervened. So that's your human on the loop concept. And then human out of the loop, I think in some instances, it's completely AI analyzing the data, making the decision, and literally automatically acting. And in some of the high frequency trading, probably that's what you're seeing. But I mean, in general, if you look in the industry, the preference is more around combination of both. It's not AI dominating. So AI can handle the scale, but we still need humans for the judgment.
Mm,
Um, the plus part that I'm talking about on this is this other half where it has to be an some sort of inform, involve, and enable type of engagement. Where, if you think about newer technologies compared to the older ones, AI, I think there is a lot of anxiety around this topic,
mm,
and for a reason. I mean, you're seeing coding is done with AI, developer jobs are lost, customer care tasks are done with AI, customer care jobs are lost, and there are examples of actually job losses around that. So clearly, the anxiety is real, and I think if we talk about informing people on why we are adopting this capability, if you are letting people play with that and get more used to it and suggest more better options, include everybody in that discussion, I think that's where this conversation is going to change from AI replacing us to AI actually will reshape how we are going to contribute. I think it's
mhm.
more like a contribution enhancer than replacement play. But I think the communication around that with the human is kind of going to decide how that goes and how skillfully leaders can do that. So that's what is making it from necessary to sufficient condition in my mind when we
Mm.
are talking about the human in the loop plus.
I like that. I like that a lot. Inform, involve, enable the human. I mean, that's the direction we want to go because AI are just tools. I mean, we want to use the tools to get things done. And the key is to figure out how to do them, how to effectively leverage these technologies. I'll just get some quick comments from our other guests before we dive into the radio show. But Lou, Simon, I was laughing all the way through this. I think it's brilliant. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, I agree with a lot of this, Sarang, as we're kind of going through this. And in the successful projects that we've had with customers, we've had a few in large scale enterprise in manufacturing here at Optima. Whenever we're going into this, I see a consistent theme. And I think Sammy brought this up at the beginning before we jumped on the call as far as the new UX models. And I fully understand and believe that trust becomes the new UX. And I think Sarong is kind of tying
Mm.
this all together nicely with the way that you're talking hands, heart, and head. So like when we're going through that part of the process and you think about that trust as the UX, if we're designing for that trust in the organization for humans to be able to utilize it, can I trust it? Who's accountable if something goes wrong? How do I know it's getting better, not worse? Right? Like these become more akin to HR processes, right? Where you're
Mm.
trying to trust somebody being hired into the organization, not just a software product that you dump on the shelf. And I think the product is the trust. The product is not the agent. The agent is just a vehicle to get to that part of the process. So I
Wow.
think this all ties that up nicely, strong.
Yeah.
Wow. Samuel, let's get a quick Oh, you have another slide. Go ahead. Go ahead, Sarah.
Yeah, I just have couple of other things I wanted to point out. So these things also have pretty big, in my opinion, their talent strategy implications. So when you hear our workforce isn't ready for AI, the conversation most of the time is in the middle on number two, where people are thinking, I don't have enough, ML ops engineers or prompt engineers or data engineers. I think even more important is one and three, where do you have or does organizations have specific strategist type talent or business me's who know the difference between a real AI use case and how are they going to bring that up? And that would be meaningful. And also on the third, where do we have like AI enablement leads, or if you're going to make it like an internal AI product marketing manager who is kind of promoting these things across the enterprise, because that's where it kind of falls flat on not everybody being aware and not having that kind of skill set. I mean, I don't know, all organizations probably this is something in years to come they're going to think about keeping these new roles, or who in our organization is good at doing some of these things, I think is going to be critical. And really quick, I think last couple of slides, it's kind of like, think about, I mean, as Eric, I was thinking it's 10% math, 90% anthropology.
Mm.
Simpler part is math. I think technology, however, yeah, I mean, it's already improving a lot, it's doing a lot, and it's comparatively, I'm not saying easy, but there is a lot of efforts already underway in doing that. But from organizational friction perspective and driving into the culture piece and the anthropology, I think there is a lot more room to go as we kind of evolve more. So lastly, I think I'm kind of proposing if we have a with the head, instead of just basic redesigning something here and there, if you have a refinement instead of refinement, like a true redesign of what is the real core AI capability, that would be helpful. On the hands, it's more shifting that investment from just the model licensing and how much that costs to figuring out the data engineering and the governance pieces better. And then the heart centric change management, it's treating your AI deployments more as a cultural shift rather than just a technical upgrade. So that's the last slide I have, Terry. Thank you.
That was fantastic, Sarang. I have to say it. And Sammy, I'll throw it over to you just for commentary. I really like the way he's positioning all this, and I especially like the vaporware on Stargate. Like, and we all kind of figured out, wait a minute, so you're giving them money, and then they're buying your shares, and then what's going on here exactly? Is that a shell game? But anyway, go ahead, Sammy. What are your thoughts?
Well, first of all, fantastic framing, Sarang. I think it's very hard to disagree with anything that you put on this deck. There are a few things though I want to kind of bring up. One, the failure rates. I actually think that for some of it, we're prematurely judging because it takes sometimes longer for a new technology to get adopted, and certain things have become more fungible. AI projects have a failure rate twice the rate of other projects, but maybe it's because we're doing AI projects at a pace 5 times the older type of project.
Interesting.
The second thing is, like, of that 600 billion plus investment, I wonder how much of that was capital investment
Yeah,
and how much
that's a
of
good
that
question.
is still to be materialized. Maybe that 400 billion plus number might be a little misleading, but at the same time, what is clear here is that the problem we have is not an AI problem or a model problem, as you put in here. Like, we really have a data problem. And because of that data problem, moving 50% of the AI budget to data engineering and governance, that's actually, I cannot agree with that more. Uh, so much so that, Eric knows my new company is focusing on exclusively data engineering, because without the right type of data or right information, you're just magnifying garbage in, garbage out phrase, an order of magnitude, right? And AI tends to lose trust when it starts to make up things. It confidently doesn't know what it doesn't know. And if we don't focus on the heart aspect of it, or the head or the hands aspects that you have identified here, we're not going to get the traction. We're not going to get the adoption. And also, I think if we don't pull in a bigger audience in our organizations into the mix, if we leave them behind, that's going to be a failure of all of us, not just those people who did not adapt to the change. So, agree with everything that you're saying pretty much here. And I think it's yes and not but from my perspective.
Right.
I was going to add a little bit to that, Sammy, and I agree with the data part, right? We get into this and we talk about very visionary AI strategies that cross-cut many different silos of the organization. And it's not just one technology, it's touching an end-to-end organizational process, not just an
Wow.
individual. And I think you touched on the data, and in some pockets, that data context is there. So it's very valuable to expose those first if you can. But what I think combining the data part to what Sarang was saying, kind of bringing it all together, it's not another tool. It's a governed process and a consistency and a commitment to improving that process of how you're using these models. I think that's important, and I think it builds that trust. And I
Mhm.
think that's what, again, we've done this in a lot of large enterprise organizations, and that hard work, because it's extremely hard to manage that organizational change. It's a different process, a different muscle. Most organizations aren't built to do this yet.
Yeah.
It's a lot of work, and I think when we sell this, we're out in the front of this, right? Like we're all kind of sharing our perspectives on it. But when we're selling this to our organizations that we work with, that part of it, like the real getting into the detail, into the dirt to plant the right seeds is the most important piece too. So I
Mm,
agree.
wow.
If I could chime in one more thing, the human in the loop comments that you had, Sarang, I think that's the human in the loop, human on the loop. The different autonomy levels really map to adoption maturity in not just overall organization, but different levels of organization. And it's ironic that you just mentioned the self-driving piece. I think, Eric, you and I were on another call, like, we mentioned this earlier. The more you get, you build trust, the more you lean on the autonomy or higher level of autonomy. You start from a very guided and then to a semi-autonomous to increasingly autonomous. And I think that's the maturity curve for AI adoption maps directly to that human in the loop picture that you painted.
Yeah.
Hmm.
And Sammy, I think I want to add something on what you're just describing on the variations of autonomous functioning of the product. So I always remember this where when you go to the car dealership, the first time I heard them say uh, this is a driver aware versus driver assist technology. They're like, we are just going to tell you that there is a problem. Whereas here is the one where actually it is applying the torque that it will move your car to the right lane. It's not just going to tell you, it's going to correct the problem or whatever, right? So from the data quality, I hear this a lot to say, is this product actually detective or is it detective and then eventually going to be preventative, and or is it going to go in and solve that problem? So I'm with you. I mean, I think you have to start with a level that is comfortable and then improve on top of that in these AI models
And that
until we get
actually
the
ties,
trust.
yeah, and that ties in, acutely into, the AI understanding its purpose and intent and optimizing itself and self-learning and improving towards the goal that it was built or it was designed for. What you just actually, like, kind of mentioned with driver aware versus I forgot the other term.
The
That's
assist.
essentially,
Yeah.
yeah, it's
Driver
it's
assist.
essentially like, the purpose, the head in your model needs to identify, why does this exist? Is this lane assist or is this FSD, full self-driving, right? Like, why do I exist? Intent awareness.
Hmm.
Yeah,
I love it.
and we get into to that, Sammy, as well, right? We're not taking this too technical, but if you go down a layer, you start to get into what is AI. We have non-deterministic, deterministic, probabilistic. Like there's a number of different approaches to that you can take. But again, it's building the trust in the process, and then you can start to really dig down into what's important for the car at that point.
Wow. Yep. That's good stuff, guys. Well, let's go from there into the show. All right, ladies and gentlemen, hello and welcome back once again to the longest running show in the world about data. It's called DM Radio. Yours truly, Eric Kavanaugh, here with an all-star cast today, folks. I'm super psyched to have three of the smartest people I know in the world of AI. And which kind of AI? There are lots of different kinds of AI. In the boardrooms now, people are like, we need to buy the AI. It's like, okay, which one? Because there are lots of different AIs. And on a call earlier today, we were talking about data science. Remember Harvard Business Review? Like, ooh, the sexiest job in the world is the data scientist. I remember hearing that. I'm thinking, no, it's not. Data scientist, it's a very interesting job if you're a researcher and you're very disciplined and you're very focused and you want to accomplish things and you can really maintain your own context window for a significant period of time. Yeah, you might be a data scientist. Is it sexy? I don't know about that. But all of a sudden, Gen AI and thus AI more generally, no pun intended, has just subsumed everything. It sucked all the oxygen out of the room. Everyone's talking about this as if it's the be all end all. It isn't. It certainly is not the be all end all. And if you want to have success with AI, yes, you need to know your business use case. Yes, you need to understand the different kinds of technology. Yes, you need to figure out what exactly you're trying to accomplish and know what victory looks like. All these things are really, really important, and it takes time to think through all that. And so today in the call, we have my buddy Sarang Bapat. He's a senior VP over at Mitsubishi Electric. We've got Sami Akbay, who is with a new company, Dajin.ai. And of course, Lou Simon is here as well from Yinzer Nation, Pittsburgh guy, and he is with a company called Optima. These are all very forward-looking AI practitioners. And as we were doing our first half of this call in our virtual summit, and Sarang was talking about the head, the heart, and the hands, and how it's a cultural shift. And we really need to wrap our heads around this. It is a major shift in how you do things, maybe not necessarily what the end results are. It's still, you're running a business, you're still trying to do services or products or whatever you were trying to do before, but now you're doing it in a different way. And it's very, very different. I had a girl on just recently, Sharon Guy is her name. Guy is an AI, as she jokes, GAI. She worked for Alibaba and she ran the retail side, like the ML ops side of retail for Alibaba. So she knows a couple things. And she came up with a really good analogy. She said, look, all the way up until recently, like a year and a half ago, 2 years ago, we were all worker bees. And that's what we did. We went out, we did all this, we did our things, made our honey, whatever. She said, now you need to be a beekeeper as opposed to a worker bee. And the agents are going to be the worker bees. And it's like, oh, that's a pretty big shift. Well, the joke that I thought of, and I have to read this because it is so funny. This is one of the absolute funniest emails that ever went around. Someone who hears this will probably remember. This is from probably like 5, 10 years ago. It's an email to tech support, and of course it's a joke. Subject: Wife 1.0 software complaint. Dear tech support, last year I upgraded from girlfriend 7.0 to wife 1.0, and I've noticed significant slowdown in system performance. While Girlfriend 7.0 ran smoothly and allowed concurrent applications like Poker Night 10.3, Football 5.0, and Late Nights 2.1, Wife 1.0 automatically launches background processes such as Shopping 6.0 and Cleaning 4.2, which consumes a lot of resources. Additionally, Wife 1.0 installs itself in all system directories and monitors system activity constantly. Applications like Happy Hour 3.5 and Golf 2.8 no longer run or crash immediately upon startup. I also tried reinstalling Girlfriend 7.0, but the system won't allow it. Can you help? And of course, the response is hilarious. Dear user, this is a very common issue. First, note that Girlfriend 7.0 is an entertainment package, while Wife 1.0 is an operating system. It is designed to run everything. Attempting to reinstall Girlfriend 7.0 will cause system instability and is not recommended. Anyway, it goes on and on. But I thought that was one of the funniest emails ever. I'm like, it's an operating system. It's completely different. But I'll throw it over to Sarang to comment on. I mean, it's a cultural shift when you go from girlfriend to wife. That is a cultural shift. Different dynamics come into play, and it's kind of what we're talking about here. What do you think, Sarang?
It is. And I think immediate focus on when you talk about the AI and other things, it kind of just gets zoomed in on the technology piece and have
Right.
what's talk about like what LLM models we will use or what kind of companies we would hire to do this type of work and all of that, and very little effort on what exactly are we trying to solve, and is this the right approach to even go after to use the AI solution? And then if
Right.
it is, then do only few people in the room know that it is the right thing, or does everybody in the enterprise know it is the right thing to do, and this is the one they would be using? Because majority of the time, 5% of the people who are actually thinking it's a great thing are not the ones who are going to use it. So I think it
Right.
becomes vitally important that people who are the main stakeholders of that are fully bought into it ahead of we going into building these things, not after the fact.
Wow. That's an excellent point. Lou, go ahead. I see you nodding your head.
Yeah, the transition is massive at a human scale. This is not just like going from girlfriend to wife. I think the analogy is spot on. We talk about things today, like when we're thinking about these agentic processes, where you have an agent that's managing an organizational process end to end, right? And maybe some of it's in sales, maybe some of it's contracting, maybe it's in order placement, maybe it's in fulfillment, maybe there's some service piece there. And it's kind of looking at that for your customer. The flip is typically you would have a human in each one of those pieces giving information across the chain. The AI can see all of that. So we're not only flipping from this kind of new tech modality, that agent now has multiple skills. I can see into the CRM data store. I can see into the MES data store. I can tell Lou to go validate something on the floor and come back and give me a response. So it's starting to get more towards the construct of the automated process has you as a skill, not the other way around. And it
Hmm.
becomes a little bit of an interesting dichotomy whenever you start thinking. And I think that is very difficult for people to wrap their heads around. And it's very akin to, I don't know if anybody on this has heard the analogy from Ford whenever he created his manufacturing process. And he said, if I asked my customer what they would want better in the product that they had, they would have told me a better horse, right? And he
Hmm.
made the automobile. And it's the same kind of a jump. It's a humanistic approach moving into this. And who knows what life's going to look like after some of these things start to really rip and roll.
Yeah, that's a really good point. And you bring up an excellent point around the magic word context. And what's great is that the agent can, if it's designed properly, of course, can see, as you suggest, the end-to-end
Right.
process. One of the big issues in corporations is all the knowledge transfer that has to happen from person to person, which just
1000%.
doesn't happen, or people weren't listening, or they don't care, or you have infighting. I mean, there are all kinds of problems that this will solve for us as long as we can absorb the change and begin to work in this new way. But Sammy, I'll throw it over to you. What do you think about that?
No, I think you're absolutely right. We have a lot of tribal knowledge in how we operate in our companies, in our businesses, in our processes. And in order for agents to be effective, you need to also institutionalize that knowledge
Yeah.
and figure out how to turn that into something that is uh,
Wow.
that's continuing
I
Well,
know.
we're losing him.
that's not nearly uh, said than done. Um, it's essentially with agents, we can take the tasks that are kind of more repeating, less creative, and automate those. And then, like, over time, just focus more on value creation, have the human involved in places where we create rather than where we maintain.
Hmm.
So one of the things that, like, is so amazing about the newer AI technologies is that I can go just write code, do things that I could, very slowly do in the past, very rapidly. I get excited about, oh, okay, well, today I'm gonna go like code myself something and, like, turn it into a little hackathon project at home. But I never wake up saying that, oh, let me go maintain uh, this little code that I had created. Yeah, that's not the fun part, and that's not really what captures the imagination. That's not what captures value. But if you could take that burden of repetitive things from the hands of the people, and then take the processes, sometimes reinvent them, sometimes retool them, to be less of a burden and focus on value creation. That's when we start bringing true, like disruptive, transformative outcomes to our businesses.
Hmm. That's an excellent point. I'll throw it back over to Sarang. That's what you always wanted to do with automation anyway. We've always wanted to automate the tedious, but guess what? Automation is hard. And one of the big reasons why it's hard is because of the edge cases. You can automate for the main. I'll just give you an example of some horrible automation that's baked into, I guess it's the Mac mail program. It's driving me nuts. It's auto completing things I don't want it to
Yeah.
auto complete. And I can't figure out how to turn that stupid thing off. Like, I get that, okay, you know it's going to be the next word, but I was typing that next word. So it's like, I want much more, more. I'm like, no, would you stop trying to automate that, please? Like, so the question, and you actually talked about this in your presentation, Saran, the key is to know, is this really an AI use case, or is this just automation, or is this just fine tuning something? Like, and that's where I think a lot of the danger, the 95% failure rate, which is probably, due to flaws in the research and some miscalculations. But I think part of the problem is people weren't really fully cognizant about what this stuff can do and should be doing, and we're trying to do whatever, and that's where you get into some trouble, right, Sarang?
Right. And I think partly what's happening is, I think you touched on it a little bit, Eric, on uh, tribal knowledge and really, some sort of a semantic layer that has to be built in for machine to understand what you really mean, or that our humans knew what it was, but it's not as well documented for these automations or workflows or even the AI engines to kind of know programmatically. That semantic layer has to be really good, which most of the time what information we have is probably like 5 or 10% of the critical data elements, and they are defined under glossaries and report terms, but that's hardly maybe 5% of our data, which is well defined and well curated. All rest of it, it's not. So if you're actually trying to focus on something that is way beyond that, I think that's where now you start to see results that are not as great as you thought it would be, because all these other foundational pieces of the semantic layer or getting more information is not built into that. So I
Mm,
think people misunderstand sometimes on AI can do anything, or I can ask any question to it. I'm like, you can ask any question to it in this very specific context, because that has semantic layer and it will answer that part right, but not
right.
for everything.
Yeah, that
That's
that's the marketing
Yeah,
hype cycle that we're in right now. And I
yeah,
think um, again, in consulting, when we're doing this work, the important part of the front of that process is saying what it doesn't do, right? It's more important to say like, hey, it's not going to go grab your grandma's greatest recipes and put them in front of your service tech. We're going to start looking at what that tech needs to do their job on the ground, look at the context of data that we're working in, see where that information is. If we have to produce more, great. If we don't, even better. And presenting that in the right context.
mm, right. Well, that's the
I
key is
love what Sammy said, by the way, because it hits me deep in my soul. We're enabling, I am, anybody who's a software engineer, not to get too technical, hates repeated tasks, like hates it. And it's in my soul. And those are the kind of things I like to create. So from a good and a positivity perspective, right? Like use these tools. They really do take a lot of that maintenance burden off of you and give you the chance to be your creative self. So I like that a lot, Sammy.
yeah.
Yeah, to add to that, Lou, especially building applications and building these AI projects, people get really excited about maintaining them, not so much.
right.
But in order for these things to be able to go into deployment and production, you need to have the underlying data pipelines.
Yep.
Yeah, people don't get nearly as excited about building data pipelines, let alone like, oh, I'm going to go fix some broken data pipelines today. Yay, said nobody ever, you know. So
Yeah.
there's
Yeah.
there's actually an entire supply chain underneath data supply chain underneath this in order to make these projects to be valuable and successful. And we're at just the tip of the iceberg, right? I mean,
Yeah. Very
the
true.
it's captured everyone's imagination. It's awesome. It's amazing. But now it's time to really bring it to life. And to bring it to life, some of what we need to do is not as much fun, and it's not just about technology. You know, us engineers can fix anything with technology, but it's not really a technology problem alone.
I agree.
Right.
It's a change problem,
Yeah.
and it
Right.
is, and I think we're all saying the same thing different ways. I agree.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Well, change management. I mean, I've talked to a lot of different people, and I've paid attention to change management for a long time because we do these shows, and so I learned from smart people. I figured out I'm a distillation model, right? Like I haven't learned on the front end. I'm like deep seek. I've learned from the outputs of all the other models, right? So I know all these references, and you can kind of piece it together in my head to know where these things are all going. But change management is humongous, or as my mother used to say, ginormous. I mean, that is the elephant in the room right now. How do you deal with that on a cultural level? And that's why it's actually a perfect thing to mention on the show today, because what Sarang was talking about in our pre-show, and for those of you listening on air, you can hop onto YouTube and we'll have it posted there so you can watch the presentation. But that's why it's a cultural shift, which it starts in the heart. First of all, you have to have the will to go down this path. And if you don't have the will to go down this path, someone will for you, and then you'll be out of a job, most likely. So this is I mean, it is a clarion call. It is a mandate to understand these technologies, to figure out where to apply them in your workflows, in your organization. You must do this. If I mean, depending if you're a plumber, maybe not. If you're an electrician, probably. But you can learn so much from these things. The key is be careful what you give it access to. Don't give robots guns, for example. But folks, don't touch that. I'll be right back. You're listening to DM Radio. All right, folks, back here on DM Radio, All-Star Cast. Your host here, Eric Kavanagh, with Lou Simon of Optima, Sarang Bapat of Mitsubishi Electric, and Sami Akbe of Dajin.ai. We're talking all about data pipelines and how it's not fun. Like, I loved your line, Sammy. Oh, yeah, I'm going to go fix some data pipelines today. How exciting, said no one ever. But it's the important stuff. It's the plumbing. It really is the plumbing. I just had a plumber come over today because yesterday the in-laws came over and we had a great time. And then I went to the bathroom and like did something. And then I'm like, that shouldn't be that much water. I can kind of hear the water running. I'm like, oh no, did that thing break out front? I opened the door and sure enough, the pipe had popped and like water just spraying out the front of my house. I'm like, okay, time to call the plumber. Like,
Human
this
in
is
the
not
loop.
human in the loop. Because boy, you don't catch that fast enough, man. Oh my goodness, these days water is expensive. Like you could, if you had a leak like that going for a couple days, you'd get a very, very, very unpleasant bill. And that's what's happening up in the cloud too, right? I mean, this is one of the dangers of cloud computing. And maybe I'll throw it over to Lou because he knows a lot about that stuff.
Yeah.
One of the funny quotes I heard, this is a few years ago, but the most ungoverned line item on your IT budget is your Amazon bill. Because you
Yeah.
just wake up one day like, Bing, what? $40,000? What's that for? But go ahead.
Yeah, there's a couple different perspectives on this, and I lead a team of innovation uh, who are AI ML full stack devs. We have an AI team at Optima. We focus pretty heavily on looking at AI modeling, and then we go into different technologies like Salesforce Agentforce or these things, and we try to apply that tech together. The innovation team always has, we have our gap fillers, right? Where there's always differences in enterprise systems to be able to do this. And I had that surprise. I looked one time and I got to be careful because I don't know who's going to end up watching this, but we got a shock bill and it was like, holy cow, it was necessary to get over the hump in one of our hurdles that we were in. And honestly, whenever I took a step back and was looking at it, it would have been two or three additional developers to be able to build that instead of utilizing kind of the cloud stack, the model stack that we were looking at. So it was a benefit. But the way that we capitalized that compared to a person being on the team is different. So then you get into these interesting conversations in business, and it goes, I think, Sammy, you were talking about new business constructs that are going to start happening. And these are part of those too. And I don't mean to be long-winded, but I want to go back to kind of the personal stuff that Eric was mentioning. And we're so advanced with robotics and artificial intelligence now. We had a lot of high wind storms this past weekend in Pittsburgh, Eric, right? If you know,
Oh, yes, I
we
know.
had roads closed, trees down. The utility companies were all over. I was without power and internet for about 3 days. It was kind of brutal, and trying to figure out what to do. And you then can start to construct these thoughts in your head from an enterprise perspective. If companies could just install a Tesla Optimus right at the end of my street that can go clear trees off the street corner, or I have a line crew that's not going to get electrocuted because there's a bouncing wire getting off there. They can take it, put it onto the side of the road, flag a repairman to come and do these things much faster. And pulling it back to the enterprise, right? Different governance models of how we use cloud technologies. The utility has to amortize, I think, for 10 years in advance to be able to kind of plan for what utility costs would be. So I think we're also going to be really innovating and considering on like utility business models here as well. So the cloud data consumption thing, definitely going to be a surprise. I saw a stat somewhere that the new development team is supposed to have about $1,000 per day of AI use as an estimate, like for every
Wow.
single day that they are utilizing the AI tools. And this will give that 100x kicker into that. And those are the kind of things we're thinking of as we build out our teams.
Wow. I mean, there are so many implications, and the challenge is really trying to understand the dependencies and how this decision will result in this set of dependencies, this decision will result in that set of dependencies, and what the lag is, and there are all
Yeah.
these
And
things
it's
going on that make it very difficult to know what to do. And it's because, guess what? The world is wide open. I mean,
right.
I saw a comedian the other day. I won't steal his thunder, but he referred to the latest events on the world stage, and like basically this big war that's going on, and he said, what I learned from that is you really can't do anything these days. Like it's amazing. The possibilities are endless, and you're like, oh no. Yeah, right. You can, but I'll throw it over to Sarang. I mean, like enterprises are not binary. The world is not binary. The world is analog. The world is all over the
We
place.
picture them as binary, though, Eric.
Right.
So
Well,
that mental model, and I'll let Sarong answer,
right.
is going to begin to start to bleed. And it's the same with enterprise corporate structures, right? If I have the ability
Right.
to do a full stack team's work underneath me, why like, everybody is going to be, it's just going to be interesting. But sorry, Sarong, go
Yeah,
ahead.
no,
Yeah, go ahead.
no. I think you're right. It's very interesting. I feel like a lot of these things are so interconnected, right, across the business and things like that. And I think we were talking about the pipeline discussion and things like that earlier. When I used to work in financial services, when things go kind of unnoticed, right, and we are talking about like credit scores and credit decisioning and more on the commercial side of things, your interest rates or, you know, it matters a lot at the commercial level. Like if it matters 1x here, it matters 10x there.
Right.
And we got a situation where quarterly update on the credit scores was exactly the same information they sent us before, and it got applied and they were expecting it to be different, and come to find out they have done a lot of work to get their scores down and all that. And since the file upload was never checked whether it was the same file, not same file, pipeline wasn't checked for differences or whatever. And that's the logic, right? I mean, is the pipeline you're checking just stuff coming in out, or is it more intelligently built to say, are you expecting that and something didn't go there and then take action based on that, or that kind of thing? So I think there is a lot more devil is in the details kind of thing when you're building these pipelines, right? It's not just normal or ETL, like it's coming in, loading, okay, great, duplicate, I mean, the basic things. But
Hmm.
I think, and it has wider impacts across the business lines. So I think that's even more important to pay attention to when we're building these pipelines.
Right. Well, and Sammy, you've kind of talked about this, and other people are talking about it as well. The cycle time Like we're dealing with logarithmic change rates these days, basically, where things are changing so fast, but that doesn't mean you throw out the old practices. You just have to embed them in a different way.
Mm.
And that's kind of what you're thinking too, with this, with basically self-healing agentic
Yep.
pipelines, basically. Like you're closing the loop. I remember we talked about closing the loop 25 years ago when I was working for Damon Consulting down in Austin. We talked about operationalizing business intelligence and closing the loop. And it's like we've now closed the loop, and we've closed the loop on closing the loop is one way to put it, right? Because now it's like it's going so fast that you better make darn sure that loop is closed. Otherwise, it's gonna just zing off like the robot that went nuts in the California restaurant the other day. But Sammy,
Oh,
what do you
the
think?
dancing robot.
Yeah, I saw that.
Yeah, it's that was cute.
Oops.
Uh, so, I mean, you and I had this conversation before. My thesis is that the data pipelines themselves need to become agentic over time. As in,
Agree.
in the past, we had scripts, then we went to ETL. From ETL, we went to modern data stack, and we kind of came to a mental model where, okay, bring the data into a central repository, create your medallion architecture, do your silver, do your gold, and then like, make that available. For the first time, the top consumers of your data pipelines, the output from your data pipelines, is not just human, right?
Hmm.
Now we have machines, AI agents, RAG systems as first class consumers of the data on the other side, which also means that the variety and the change of the expectations from the pipeline has also increased, which that's why, at Agent, we're talking about the agentic data pipelines as the new construct, which need to first be intent aware. While you're building the pipeline, you need to specify this is the purpose, why I'm building this pipeline. It very much aligns with Sarang's presentation where you have to have the head that determines why something is being done. Then you need to give it the right tooling, and that tooling is not rip and replace. It's more intent driven. It's more the existing things, but coupled with the right metadata, the right information for it to be able to become self-healing when something breaks. So that adds the observability. And then, of course, as you add different levels of autonomy as time goes by, and as you institutionalize tribal knowledge, it becomes better and better at automating the things and fixing the things that you can do without a human in the loop automatically, and then sending the data engineer or sending the human a Slack message or an email saying that, hey, I need a helping hand here. So
Hmm.
I think this is just, we cannot do the same things that we used to do and scale 10x or 100x that we will have to do over the next few years. We'll have to leverage the new technology. We need to look at our existing processes and then create new and better ways to operate. That's going to
Hmm.
be the key to being able to adapt to the change that we're faced with right now.
Yeah.
Yeah,
New one.
adding
Go ahead.
to that, Sammy, that skill that you said that you send the human a Slack message to do a thing becomes the skill of the AI that's managing the process. So you are now there's an API, it's Slack, and they send you a message, go check that thing, come back to me and report back, right? Like, so that's just an automated process for the AI. It's all it cares about. When we're looking at this from an enterprise perspective, I mentioned Carnegie Mellon and Skip Shelley leads the Human Centered Design School over there. We're good friends. We talk about this, Sammy, as AI centered design, right? Like we
Mhm.
don't look at it's like we have human centered design and we have how the humans interfacing, but now you have to start designing in those individual perspectives of, okay, what data does it have? What context is it operating in? Can it operate a chainsaw? Right? Like these are the kind of things that you have to consider whenever you automate these. And I don't know if anybody went down the Claude route a few weeks back, but those things were malicious, ruthlessly working to do what they were supposed to do. If you don't consider what each one of those agents are doing, it'll get control of your entire contact list, start randomly messaging people to get money for PayPal. And
So I actually had to shut down the third installation of it that I had when it started messaging my friends on WhatsApp.
same, it did the same for me. It started downloading my contacts and it started asking for money. And I
It
was
didn't
like,
ask for money. Mine didn't ask for money, but what it did was like, when it ran out of tokens,
yeah,
it started sending error messages. That's when someone pointed out that like, my Clobot was talking to them.
yeah, it's insane. But those are exactly, that's a lesson learned, right? Failure is good if we learn from it. That's the AI centered design piece. What do you want this thing to do and what don't you want it to do? Because an analogy somebody explained to me is AI isn't conscious. It doesn't do things. We recognize consciousness in it. If you're going to the gym and you're trying to use a machine and you tell the AI to go use the same machine, it will walk right through you. It doesn't care. It's not conscious, it's ruthless execution.
Mm.
So that's the way that you have to think about it. It will just blow through every context that you think it's going to adhere to.
But did I stop using it? No.
No, I same. I adjusted and went a little further.
Exactly.
That's
Uh,
funny. And a lot of people don't know this. It's a fun little tidbit. Ruthless, that's a very interesting word to choose. It's very accurate because ruth is care. Like if you have ruth, you care. It's like
mhm.
empathy, basically. Ruthless means you don't care. Like there is no empathy, and these things are not sentient, and so
It's
therefore
exactly right.
they are
Yeah.
ruthless. Like they don't
There,
care.
there's no empathy. They don't have business construct. We're all professionals. We have a set framework that we operate in talking to each other just by being around and being in that industry. AI
Right.
has none of these things. And that's the piece that I think a lot of people just take for granted right now.
Wow. That's actually a very, very good point. It gets back, and our next segment is coming up here in just a moment or so. But we'll dig back into Sarang's head, hands, and heart because that heart, that's the Ruth. That's the empathy. Heart is what
Yes.
cares. Heart is what can get excited about something. AI agents don't get excited about stuff. And just because they tell you that you're great doesn't mean they're sentient. These things are not sentient. And if you look
Right.
at some poor people who get off the rails with these things, it's because they're convinced that there is a sentience underneath there, and so they're buying into that. And this gets into the ethical things that Lou was talking about earlier. Like we really do need some social contract that we adhere to and aspire toward in order to do this properly, because it's going to be terribly, terribly disruptive. But folks,
Yeah.
don't touch that dial. We'll be right back. You're listening to DM Radio. All right, folks, back here on DM Radio with an all-star cast: Lou Simon of Opta, Sarang Bapat of Mitsubishi Electric, and Sami Akbay of Dagen. That's DAGEN.AI. Very interesting stuff. And sentience. Are they going to be sentient? Artificial general intelligence. My take on that is no. It's not going to be. It's not going to be sentient ever, but it will seem sentient, and that's the thing. And if it's able to process enough information, it can do a lot of different things. I mean, frankly, let's get a little bit futuristic here, and I'll throw it over to Sarang first and then go around the room here. I think before too long, you really are going to see AI more or less running companies. And the CEOs or the executives will be able to override. You're going to have your kill switch, if you will. You can say, no, AI, I'm going to do it this way instead, but you will be tracked. And if it turns out you were right and things worked out, then okay, you're not in trouble. But if you tell the AI no, and then you screw something up and lose the account or whatever, that's going to be bad. And so we're going to need the heart, like a real strong heart in organization and the organizational will of the leadership to not just give in to the desire to be ruthlessly efficient with what we're doing, right, Sarah?
Yeah, I think the part that we are kind of little bit underestimating is how critical that uh, communication piece with the general all the employee base that we are going to have, because a lot of the employees have no direct say into making the calls on the AI projects, right? I mean, it
Right,
gets decided in the boardrooms or maybe in the leadership teams and all that, but it impacts pretty much all the population in the company.
right.
So I mean, it's I think considering the anxiety levels, it is not surprising. I mean, nobody should underestimate why there is so much anxiety around even the topic of generating or creating these capabilities. Because immediately, if you're talking about, even the basic things as warehouses getting robotic, automated, set of warehouse people, call centers we already saw, developers we are already seeing that. But the what we are saying about what the initiatives are about, and is that more about entirely, like, to your point, ruthless efficient process, or is it more value add things that we weren't able to do because we were spending time on mundane activities, or things that, like Sammy was saying, all these maintenance activities or things like that, we were spending ton of time on that. If those get automated, we could scale probably 10x with the same number of people we have. But I think
Hmm.
that argument, or how we are positioning that communication upfront, is going to be like a key component of the success, or it doesn't. Because if you're kind of giving it to people who you haven't bought that concept in, chances are that they are not going to lean into that, or probably you're going to get mixed results or responses saying these things are not working the way we are expecting, and things like that, because of the fear factor that they have. So you wouldn't
Mm-hmm.
probably hear like the honest opinion about it, or the contribution value type conversations will be more protection and fear, which is where the leadership would come in the picture on how you communicate these topics.
Yeah. I mean, leadership will matter more than ever, I
Absolutely.
think. And you want leaders with real empathy. And you got to watch out. We had a lady on the show a while ago. She had the best quote of all time because she was talking about some of these CEOs who say, "Oh yeah, we're looking at AI as cutting headcount. Like that's literally what we want to do." First of all, calling it headcount bothers me right away. That sounds like there's no empathy there. It's not headcount, it's people. These are human beings. But it's also like I don't just as just personal preference here. I don't like when marketing people or executives refer to new logos. We want to get new logos. No, they're clients who are people who work at organizations. They're not logos. And I think you're really you going down that ruthless path if you take that approach. But Lou, maybe I'll throw it over to you. Leadership is going to be crucial going forward, and find ways to repurpose what people are doing. What do you think?
Yeah, it's yes. And it's a unique set of skills that's going to be very well tailored to do this in a lot of our traditional leadership roles that are not. And we have I talked a little bit earlier about collapsing corporate structures. There's a lot of leaders in organizations that funnel information around, right? Like maybe adjust it a little bit. Those are no longer
Right.
viable roles. And you get into a situation, I think somebody said we had our first like three-person corporation worth over $100 million or something just recently. I can't remember what it was. I'd have to go back and look. But in those systems, right, it's much more crucial to be thoughtful as what you're doing, how you're affecting your environment, and then also how you're affecting the society around that environment as you're making these decisions. Because again, go back to the ruthlessness of AI. It doesn't have empathy. It will run and it'll just looks to get the outcome. So if you're running it in that way, you have to make sure that you're adjusting it so that your corporation is managing and leading in the way that you want it to.
Hmm. Yeah, leadership matters. But you made another excellent point. Folks, there is a lot of, let's call it fat, that can be cut out of these processes. I mean, you even think about claims processing or like really tedious things at very large organizations. AI will be able to short circuit a lot of that stuff. And
Yep.
that's the good news. That's good because there's a lot of bureaucratic nonsense. And then also, the other thing, Sammy, I'll throw it over to you, is people just not playing nice, is people not being honest brokers, people hiding information or
Fiefdoms.
fiefdoms, right? Well, like one of my theories I threw out last year looking forward was that a lot of this AI stuff is going to mean the end of the blowhard. Right? Because what is a blowhard? A blowhard is someone who acts like they're very important, but really just stops progress. And I think those days are numbered. But Sammy, what do you think?
I actually think that it's absolutely right. Leadership is increasingly important because, unlike in the past, where things moved a little slower and certain things could have been way more learned or case-based. When I say case-based, like use case-based, we're more likely to see edge cases or changes or differences more than ever, which means that leadership really needs to be ethical. It needs to be very principled, and it needs to be value based because we're going to end up having leaders make decisions under conditions that were not commonplace in the past.
Hmm.
You know what I mean?
And can be scaled almost infinitely.
Exactly.
Like if you make a bad leadership decision, the scale goes awry.
Exactly. And when you have an HR issue and how you handle it, that's leadership resolve. That's kind of something that happens day in day out. But in the future, we're going to face problems that we have never faced before, and they have not been regulated. They have not been studied ad nauseum by philosophers or ethicists. In those situations, you need to stick to principles. You need to have a strong value system, and I mean, the importance of leadership increases a great deal. I think it's going to be exciting and interesting times, but it's also be very trying and challenging times for, being a leader in this like AI era.
Yeah. Well, like you said, you both use the word principles, I think, and you want to have principles. You want to have ethics. Lou was talking about with our friend Andy Hanna today, who's been on the show before, a super great guy. He
Yep.
sits on the ethics board over at the University of or at UPenn, and it's a very important thing. We need to think this stuff through. And it's hard to do because, especially for public companies, there is this tremendous pressure to be efficient, to gain efficiency, to be profitable, to stay on the buy side in terms of the brokers out there, and that is a very powerful incentive. It's a very powerful constraint in a way. But I think the good leaders understand that you have to weather that storm. You have to find someone who can deal with that and say, no, I understand what you're saying, but we need to take care of our people because it's about the people first. Every company, it's funny, one of my good friends, excellent developer, he was joking that he got into the music industry a while ago, it's 20 years ago, and he was like, everyone's like, oh, it's all about the music, it's all about the music. He's like, no, it's all about the people. And in every single industry, that's the same, whether it's tech or music or restaurateur or whatever it is, it's always the people because you learn with people, they're your comrades, even if they're your competition. So it's always about the people. And if you really respect that and own that and take that as your ethical foundation, I think you're going to be just fine as we move through this new era. But folks, we got a podcast bonus segment coming up here in just 1 second. And send me an email if you want to be on the show, info@dmradio.biz. We'll be right back. You're listening to DM Radio. All right, time for the podcast bonus segment here, folks, on a fantastic DM radio. And I'd like to dive into one more thing. This is this huge story that just broke the other day. That according to anonymous sources, I'm so tired of anonymous sources. I hope that these agents, these super agents, get so good at finding information that anonymous sources are out the window. Because anonymous sources are distorting gosh darn everything. Almost every single media story you read these days, according to sources familiar with the meeting who asked not to be named, would you stop with that? Someone grow a pair and like just come out and say publicly what you're doing. But there's the story that came out that Meta is looking at laying off 20% of their staff to finance AI infrastructure. And I'm thinking, what are you talking about? First of all,
Yeah.
tools are there for people to use, right? It's back to the people. The Romans had this whole concept of decimation. People misuse that word all the time. Decimation means to take 1 in 10, right? That's what it means literally, is to take 1 in 10. They're taking 2 in 10. They're going double like the worst of the Roman Empire if they want to go forward with this stuff. And I'm reading this through, I'm thinking, I'm a news guy and I'm a media guy and I'm a critical thinker. I'm like, you're cutting 20% to buy AI infrastructure, which we know right now is in tremendous demand. So the prices have gone up. There's no flash. There are no GPUs. There are no servers. And so now is the time you're going to go buy a whole bunch of new servers and flash and DRAM that you can't even get. Like, what are you talking about? I'm pretty sure they're cutting 20% of their staff because ChatGPT is eating their lunch. And from a media perspective, like I'm a media guy. Media is getting hammered right now because of ChatGPT. I mean, it's basically going to die, and that's why it's so weird at the moment because it's just falling apart. And it's almost like it's a charitable operation to be a writer these days. I mean, trying to get someone to pay you to write, it's like just get ChatGPT to write some crap, some AI slop. No, I don't think so. But I just want to get the thoughts of the panel here. I think they're saving money because they're getting their so and so handed to them by ChatGPT. And it's just the latest wave. Like in the media, first it was Google that basically was like the parasite. And yeah, it helped you get to the stuff, but it was sucking a lot of money. Then it was Facebook that was sucking the money. And I remember the media companies were like, oh, yay, we got our Facebook page and this and that. And then one day, Facebook pulled a string on some algorithm and all this traffic died and all these websites. And they're like, holy Christmas, because you gave up your means of distribution. You have to be
Right.
careful about that. Don't give it your means of distribution. And now it's ChatGPT stealing it from Meta. It's just like the latest one. But Lou, you first. What do you think?
Yeah, I think I might get in trouble for saying some of this, but I think AI is a scapegoat,
Yes.
especially for some of these tech companies. And uh, having worked in a number of tech organizations in my career, both on like from an external perspective, internal perspective, there's always kind of a bloat, right? And I think every tech executive knows that AI is a very, very convenient mechanism to say we're getting rid
Right.
of that. So
Right.
I think that's it. I don't think it's, and if they want to invest in AI infrastructure, Zuckerberg was going to do that regardless of laying
Right.
off 20. He would have found a way to do it. There's
Right.
not anything in my mind that says he wouldn't. It's the same Bezos is doing here in Pittsburgh with putting three data centers in. So, do I think that's AI? No. I think
Right.
that's just corporations doing what corporations do.
Right. Right. Sammy, I'll throw it over to you. What are your thoughts?
I agree that AI is the scapegoat here, but it's also changing working patterns, maybe a little bit. Like it's it's possible that look, when you look at the rosters of some of these companies these days, they're star-studded. When they hire people, it's as if you're, you know, acquiring contracts of like sports figures, right? And sometimes when you change direction, you also decide that you're going to change the mix of the base that you have. Now, I'm
Hmm.
not trying to justify anything, but it's just, I mean, my number one guess is that there is a bit of, let's just blame it on AI. We were going to do this anyway.
Yeah,
And number,
I completely agree with you, Sammy.
yeah,
Yep.
number two, like,
Yeah,
just
yeah,
people who made the transition, let's just like keep them and maybe upskill or change our focus in certain areas. That's like probably part two of it. And part three, I think our industry hired or overhired in some places defensively, and
Right.
maybe they were a little bloated. I don't know Meta. I don't know like their inner workings. So, and obviously, like it's always like sad when someone gets impacted in these.
Right.
But at the same time, I don't know. We're probably going to see a lot more of this transitionary shifts
Yeah.
in the composition of companies' workforces.
Right. Well, net zero job gains because everyone's laying everyone off using AI as the excuse. And that's just fundamentally dishonest. I mean, it is a scapegoat. I get that, but I think sooner or later more people are going to start figuring that out. And Sarang, I'll throw it over to you to close this out. The head, the hands, and the heart, right? You got to have all those things. I think the heart is going to be very, very important over the next couple of years. What do you think, Sarang?
Yeah, I think it's the key piece on uh, communication with the heart, how you like heart led execution is going
Mhm.
to be the key. And I think I had in my presentation, one thing that I would definitely call out is uh, call this as like a cultural upgrade versus a technical upgrade. That's the
Hmm.
difference. I think it's not your extra set of things you deliver from technology perspective. It's something that you did from the cultural aspect of things.
Yeah.
So very critical, I think, getting human in the loop on pretty much all aspects of the, head, hands, and heart is the key. And I think that's going to take companies to make it a successful venture.
I love it. Look these gentlemen up online. Lou Simon of Optima, Sarang Bapat of Mitsubishi Electric, Sami Akbe of Dajin.ai. We'll talk to you next time, folks. You've been listening to DM Radio.